All right, good evening, my friends. Welcome. My name is Barry Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is a nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books, and Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. I'm so excited to be here with all of you tonight to celebrate a book that I have been anticipating since I first heard about it over a year ago. We got word about the Fantasies of Future Things, and I did not know Doug Jones, but I emailed my friend Charles Stevens from the Counter Narrative Project, and I said, somebody's got to know this Doug Jones, because he's written this book about Atlanta. And I was like, surely you know Doug, somebody knows Doug. And Charles put the word out to Black Gay Atlanta, and Black Gay Atlanta was like, yes, we know Doug Jones. Everybody knows Doug Jones. All of y'all obviously know Doug Jones. And I put the word out because I said, I've been waiting for someone to write this book for a very long time. Been waiting for someone to write about 1996 Atlanta. Been waiting for someone to write about the legacy of Morehouse relationships for a long time. We've been waiting for this kind of book. And so it's been such a pleasure getting to know Doug just a little bit and getting to meet his friends and family who are here tonight. Welcome to all of you. We're very honored always to be in the space of Auburn Avenue Research Library on African American culture and history. This is one of Atlanta's sacred spaces. It's a space that Charis is always very, feels very sacred to us to get to be in. And while libraries are under attack right now, we need to double down on our support of our libraries. And this is frankly one of the very best of the state of Georgia, and it needs our support. We are very honored also always to be here with the Counter Narrative Project. The Counter Narrative Project is an organization that we get to do lots of great things with, and probably many of y'all are in the space because of the Counter Narrative Project in one way or another. So I hope that you will be on the lookout for folks in the Counter Narrative Project and learn more about their work. We're joined here tonight by Craig Washington. Craig was born and raised by Anna and Leon Washington in Queens, New York. He has lived in Atlanta since 1992. He's somebody that I thought of as like the organizer in Atlanta for a long, long time. He has written for The Advocate, Atlanta Magazine, TheBody.com, Georgia Voice, Huffington Post, Paz.com, and various anthologies, including Black Gay Genius and Joseph Beam's Call. He's an HIV plus long-term survivor who incorporates this experience in much of his work. As a community organizer, he co-founded the Mary Rustin Audrey Lorde Breakfast. He's led and or created several organizations and initiatives for Black gay men, including Second Sunday and the Deeper Love Project. Craig is a licensed social worker who provides individual and group counseling and can be reached online at interventionsatl.com. You can also find him online at Craig Washington Writer. So we're really glad that Craig can be here tonight for this exciting conversation with Doug. Doug Jones was born in Brooklyn, New York. We're going to let both of these New Yorkers be Atlantans. They've been here long enough. He is an alumnus of Morehouse College. He received his MFA in creative writing from Columbia University. His work has been included in the anthologies Black Love Letters, Roll Call, a generational anthology of social and political Black literature and art, and Sojourner, Black Gay Voices in the Age of AIDS. He has also written for Black Issues Book Review and Venus Magazine. An inaugural fellow of the Land Literary Writers Retreat for Emerging LGBTQ Voices, the Hurston Wright Foundation recognized Doug's early work as well. He's an avid art collector who enjoys swimming and traveling, is a proud dog dad to a lovable mixed-breed German shepherd named Baldwin. It's really special because this is his debut novel, and debut novels really are like babies. Launching them into the world takes an immense amount of work, and Doug has been working on this book for a very long time. It deserves all of the praise it's getting and so much more. We cannot wait to get you more copies since we have already sold out. We need to keep this hype train going, so please put your hands together for Doug Jones.
Thank you so much. Thanks to the folks at Charis. Thanks to the folks at the Auburn Avenue Research Library. Thanks to the folks at CPP. Thank you to all of you for showing love and buying the book, being here to support. I am going to jump right in with a little bit of reading. I'm going to read a little bit from Jacob's section and then a little bit from Daniel's section. There are basically two main characters of the book, Jacob and Daniel. And so I want to give you a flavoring of some of where they come from and some of their issues, and then Craig and I will have a Q&A. All right? My eyes on. Sorry. Jacob. There was this boy, small, dark, floating in a pool of crystal water. His arms thin, his legs kick, his breath comes quick and short. This dark boy floating, arms flailing, legs churning, is swimming. His muscles stretch and contract, moving his small body forward. It is gleeful for him to feel the water, to feel his forehead part the liquid, feel the liquid against his face, past his ears, across his back, down his arms, around his torso, over his butt, and along each leg. Small boy blows bubbles. Dark boy enjoys the water. Jacob grew up believing Atlanta was Black Disneyland, mystical, magical fairyland where Black people lived in a different America. It was on every page he read about Atlanta and Black enterprise. Stories of Ebony about the Big Peach of the South read like love letters to the city. The summers Jacob spent there visiting his grandmother were proof of Atlanta's special enchantment. Neighborhoods like Cascade Heights, college heights of Buffalo Estates, with wizardry that made you forget Jim Crow ever existed. Atlanta was synonymous with Martin Luther King Jr. and Morehouse, Spelman. That was the city Jacob fell in love with, the city to which he declared his undying allegiance. After 4 years of Morehouse, Jacob could have returned to Brooklyn. He could have taken 4 years of Booker T. Washington versus W.E.B. Du Bois, Malcolm X versus Dr. King, 4 years of discoveries on a campus full of men that proved his early flirtations with the same sex were evidence of something deeper and scarier. 4 years of explorations and development of friendships, 4 years of finding the beginnings of independence. Jacob could have taken those 4 years, going back to Brooklyn, set up residence in Fort Greene, being 5 train stops away from the brownstone where he grew up, all that was familiar in his world. But Atlanta was calling. Beyond some visits to grandma's, beyond the protective cocoon of his parents' brownstone, beyond the bubble of his reality in Morehouse. Back home on breaks, Jacob had secretly begun an exploration of his same-sex fascination. A quick walk from the A train, Nostrand Avenue Station, set the Starlight Lounge. Oxford Tennis Club was 3 stops from there at Lafayette Avenue. And across the East River at the end of Christopher Street, worlds away from Bed-Stuy, on the edge of the West Side Highway was Keller's. Clean cut, mustache brothers in close-cut fades or rocking high tops, coupled with perfectly trimmed goatees, stomping in Timbs or Air Jordans, Adidas tracksuits, or the latest gear from Cross Colors. Jacob was spellbound. He watched brothers dance together, some were lip-locked or just hugged up, showing the kind of intimacy that was supposed to be forbidden between Black men. The mystery was intoxicating by discovering a world hidden in plain sight. Their gatherings were an ecstatic release. It was in the way they moved together, the passionate fervent kisses, the reluctant lingering to let go of each other until the next moment, return to the anonymity of unseen lives that temporary high always ended in a crash. In Atlanta, Loretta's tracks at Pearl Garden were every bit the equivalent of their New York counterparts. So that's Jacob. and now Daniel. The thing to know about Daniel in this section, he has a brother and sister named Marty and Lila. Daniel, May 8th, 1992. Via registered mail to Sue Ellen Milton, care of Daniel Milton, 354 Gilchrist Avenue Southeast, apartment 2, Georgia 30316. Dear tenant, lease of these premises expires October 31st, 1992. This will serve as notice that the landlord is exercising its right not to renew the lease. Please remove all personal items and property from the premises and return all keys, including the mailbox key, to the management office by 5 p.m. on that date. Please provide a forwarding address. Upon completion of satisfactory inspection of the premises after it has been vacated, any remaining security deposit will be forwarded. Your cooperation is appreciated. Sincerely, management. It had been months since Mama's death, and Daniel took his time wrapping, boxing, and discarding remnants of her life. Not that there was much work to say, but he didn't want to miss any possible clues. Mama was always so secretive. The search exhausted her. The difference between how hard Mama worked and how sparsely they lived was humorous. The little family learns through existence from one moment to the next. Mama used to remark, God has disappointed me. Look at my life. That was Mama thinking backward, retracing moments, shuffling to memories, asking where she misstepped, ended up wrong. God has disappointed me. Of all things Mama had wished for, the most she ever wanted was to sleep late on her one day off. In red-eyed delirium, she declared the night before, I want to sleep late in the morning, don't bother me, I'll take care of yourselves. And then she'd stumble off to bed where for a time she slept. If Lila and Marty were good and dutiful children, they would have kept quiet, allowed Mama to dream and languish in bed well past the break of dawn, to forget about waking up, even when the sun dipped toward the western horizon, and still then to only toy with the idea of getting up. Good and dutiful children would have said, Mama needs her rest, and allowed the mother to dream. Forget about work. But even good and dutiful children have their limits. They forget, get hungry. Sounds would reach Mama deep down in the depths of her soul and drag her back to the present. It was always some familiar ruckus that robbed Mama of this one desired pleasure, some recognized as some common racket. A garbage truck gone by. Silent, slammed the door. Mama listened from her suspended place of dormancy, tried to return to the dreamland where she'd just been instead of coming back to an imperfect present. Screams. That was the sound. Not a garbage truck or a fire engine. A slammed door this time, but screams. Not tearing at the house, but the joyful, careless shrieking of children playing with reckless abandon. Fucking noisy children. What had she told them when she went up to bed? Now she was fully awake. Everything she had dreamed about was gone, and she was left only with stuff that had haunted her, made her tired all over, as if she had just crawled into bed. How could two kids, just two, keep up such racket? And what in hell is Ray doing? Too busy doing nothing, too busy sitting on his fat ass to even mind the children, to keep quiet so she could sleep on her one day off. Mama should have known better. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Billy. Thank you for blessing us with this rich novel, which carries so much history, so much. Thank you for that. I'm so proud of you. Thank you. Yeah, I thank you. So, I want to start actually with the cover for your book. It's a very, there's an energy to it, a tenderness. So for those of you that have the book, it's two Black men, one behind the other, and we're looking at the back of their heads. And one in front, his head is arched back in a very vulnerable position, almost like a backward embrace. What does this cover say about the story? What was the intention about it? Is there a story behind the cover itself?
There is a story behind the cover. I'll tell you the story first, a little inside publishing gossip. So when you write a book, you have all these very big ideas about what you like your cover to look like. And you communicate these things to your editor. And they go, okay, great, wonderful, blah, blah, blah. And they give it their best shot, which is what happened to me. And I had a very close friend who was going to design the cover. And this is not his design. So it didn't work out between him and the publisher and my bright ideas. And the series of covers that the publisher came out with were disturbing. And I was upset. I called my agent, I called my sister, I called my friend. It's a bleeding ugly cover. I gotta swallow this. And if I jump up and down, then maybe they won't care about my book. And I've just waited so long. My editor told me, hang on, hold on. Behind the scenes, the publisher had read, you fill out these questionnaires, and the publisher had read my questionnaire, and he said, thus says this book is for Black gay men. Put 2 gay men on the cover. My editor went and found this fabulous photo, which is by the artist named Charis. In Brooklyn now, I think, but he is based out of LA. They contacted him. He agreed to allow us to use the cover. And that's the cover that you see. And the cover captures perfectly, to answer your question, the vulnerability, the strength, the anonymity, the nakedness, the confidence, the intimacy that I think not only just the characters showing in the book, but what I would like for folks to know about who we are as Black sage and beloved men. So it's a really important cover to me, and and as dramatic as it is, it guarantees to be reviewed.
And it's so important to have that kind of depiction of Black gay men, and this unapologetic, clear, direct rendering. So thank you. You introduced Jacob to us as this Morehouse graduate from transplant from Brooklyn, who grew up seeing Atlanta as a Black Disneyland. Careful. Yeah. Seeing, his business with his grandmother, neighborhoods like Cascade Heights and Block Loman. Also, you take the pains to also introduce someone that's not naive or as such to, again, some of the anti-Black terrorism that he also grew up with coming from New York. And so you mentioned the Bumpers, her murder, Yusuf Hawkins, the exonerated father, then the Central Park father. Why was it important for Jacob to know that, for Jacob to have that as part of his history, particularly coming to Atlanta?
Right, because the book being based on a lot of, particularly Jacob and Daniel, a lot of experiences that I think. When I think about, and those of us who are from Brooklyn, particularly at that time, the late 80s and early 90s, New York was just, it was just a racial, just a fist, a time bomb. It's just something that's always happening. And Atlanta was just such a breath of fresh air. It felt like exploration. It felt like possibility. Coming from a place where you were just traveling on the train, at war, just the concept of the Black body moving through a city in which the Black body could be attacked at any time. And Jacob did not feel that in Atlanta. So it was a certain freedom that he had. And I wanted to make sure I captured that the difference in that tension versus one versus the other, so that you can experience, the reader can experience sort of the release and how Jacob allowed other things to come to its life.
Thank you. And you picked such a compelling setting for the book, right? 1992 in Atlanta, spring or summer. Clearly a pivotal moment for any of you who were here in Atlanta or knows of that era. Very definitive, yes? For a lot of reasons, particularly around the city's preparation and building around the Olympics, and all the implications of the impacts, particularly for Black folks.
Yeah.
So beyond regentrification, the acquisition, the repurposing of Black people's homes, Black people's property, Black people's neighborhoods. What about this era stood out for you and just drove you to choose it?
The obvious land grab. I'm sure some of you remember they were paying homeless people to get on the bus to ship them elsewhere. Right? It's like, disappear. And Olympics was 4 years away, and they're like in 1992. They were doing that, right? I also worked in economic development back in New York when I finished Morehouse, and back when I was going to school and things. I started out working in economic development, and it shocked me at that time how people who had an idea about what a neighborhood should look like and how people should move through the neighborhood and where it should be housed and where there should be housing and all that stuff. Not from the neighborhood, but decide that these things were going to happen and how they were going to happen. And it made me think about, well, what about people that live there already? Like, do they get to participate in any of this decision making and everything else? And that's a source of friction, and it happens everywhere and all the time. And I grew up in Bed-Stuy, right? So Bed-Stuy has now gone from a place where a family could afford to buy a house at a decent wage and everything else. I bought my first house in Bed-Stuy, and I can't afford it anymore. So, houses that were in the 1970s going for $30,000, $40,000 now. I was interested in what that story was like. What happens to the people that are there? Who makes these decisions? Why they make these decisions, or how they make these decisions? What's driving them? And then what happens to the people? Did that answer the question?
Yes, definitely. And as it were, both Jacob and Daniel are involved in the process, in the proposal. Yes, they work for, hire for a white woman who is making overtures to local leadership and pretty much making a proposal of land acquisition that meets with some resistance. Say more, don't want to too much with no child. Yeah, there was an assertion of some voice. Yeah, and it also underlined Jacob's status to a certain extent as an outsider.
Yeah,
because Jacob is a transplant, Daniel is a native. Say more about that, you know, in terms of particularly that mix of distrust and alliances and power and manipulation, you know, and the importance of respect. You know, I'm thinking about the interaction with the police, the interview, and how Detective Wilson with his fine self corrects Bezra. Yeah, he's not officer detective. Right. So respect. Yeah. Yeah.
Who has power in what situation and how that power gets exercised, right? And so for Jacob, you know, yes, he is Black and he feels as though his Barnes credentials should afford him a certain amount of acceptance and reception within the community. Right? But Jacob is working for not just a white woman, right? A white woman who is actively attacking the neighborhood. Right, so we have those two things. So where do his allegiances really lie? People looking, you know, who is he? You know, they don't know his background. They just know this man with a certain amount of access, a certain amount of privilege and power. He's trying to take their houses, and he's working for a woman who is obviously doing that. So is he Tom? You know, can he really be trusted? And that power, that class dynamic, what to think. I was interested in the flip side of that. You know, Daniel, who is the product of, let's say, whose mother is clearly white. He's searching for his father, but let's just say his mother is clearly white. And she may have, this is part of the story, right? She may have skin privilege, but class privilege is something else. And what's dominant? What's dominant and how does that work? You know, and this is a lot of what we're seeing playing out today, right? Coming out of Morehouse and supporters of the administration. Oh, we thought that we weren't going to do this to us. But wrong. It's a power.
Power grabbage. Yeah. So you did a wonderful job in terms of that balance, and it goes the ways in which your characters are so well. They're not one dimensional.
Thank you.
They have stars. They have complexity. Right? Yeah. I want to shift a bit and go to what you had noted in your reading, and that is this portrait of the New York landscape, New York like queer landscape, in which Jacob is beginning to explore his sexuality and his identities, and naming the sites where he would encounter other Black gay men. And it's some Starlight Lounge, which I've been known to frequent. And upon going to it, he finds the parallel set.
No notes.
To New York's Higgle Bar, but then tracks to New York's. Talk about what it meant for you and for the story to actually name those things in both cities.
That's a claim of authenticity. Like I know what I'm talking about. You know, because the kids will let you have it if you get a fact wrong, you're on the wrong street at the wrong time. Yeah, the tracks is not TRACKS. But also talk about community. This was a lot of those places. I remember the first time I walked into tracks, Steve. Oh, Steve is one of my close friends. And it took me a long time to get there. And Steve and a couple of other brothers were the first people that I saw. Finally. So, but it was named these places because, particularly at that time, declarations of sexuality, within families, within communities. It was different at this time. And I'm not. That's an interesting observation, right? I'm not so sure. I mean, we have things happening on a societal level, the community level, but family level may be a different conversation, right? And so it was the way in which talking about that was the way in which was talking about the ways in which Black gay folk, and I'm interchangeable with the word gay and queer. And that's a generational conversation. But looking out at the crowd, I think we are. Well, it's our contemporaries. So claiming that claims it were the ways in which we built community, we built identity, we figured out who we were, and how to build friendships. Some of that, when I came out, I might be jumping into another question, but I lost a lot of friends. My family is very conservative. So it was not, I had aunt, cousins here. It was not. It was not. Let's say that, right? It's real though. And it's important, and we all struggle through those things. I'm sure I'm the only one. And how do you build community? How do you keep sanity? How do you keep living and have those things that we all want to have friendships and laughter and social networks, things like that. So claiming those places, a lot of them don't exist anymore. So we can have a conversation about what does community look like now. But it was claiming the ways in which community was made at that
time. You mentioned the importance of establishing friendships and creating family, which has a heightened value, a heightened role in queer communities of all colors, but certainly Black individuals. Your Jacob's relationship with Sean and his boyfriend. I just want to tell you how much I was moved by that friendship circle and what that meant to Jacob. My physical survival as someone who contracted HIV at 25. My physical survival and my emotional and mental well-being were very much held intact by friends that I could kiki with, right? And that would challenge me and support me. And I'm struck by, as an example of friendship, and how Sean watched over Jacob. There's a line with Jacob. Sean is encouraging Jacob to not give up on what he's seeking around intimacy and companionship. He says, that's all you need, Jacob. Just one brother. One. Forget all the nonsense. Could you talk about that in terms of, again, that the primary importance of those friendships and how Jacob learns how to be a gay man, largely supported by his friends or those friends.
The importance of self-worth. That it looks lonely and can feel lonely, particularly the quest for intimacy, relationship, identity. Look out across the landscape, and this one is that, the next one. You're trying to figure out when that's going to happen for you. Not to give up, not to get into risky or emotionally risky situations, which lead to physically risky situations that lead to bad outcomes for us, both mentally and physically. And so I wanted to show the ways in which we get to support each other again around me. You know, and the reality of us being friends, I mean, they have their little tensions too, right? But it is about building community again, building that family voice, as we, a lot of us like to refer to. We have your biological family, there's love and support and growth there, and then you have your family of choice. And it's different, the love and support that we search for in that. And I really wanted to capture that relationship happening between, well, Sean and Jacob, but then Sean and Jacob, and Sean's boyfriend. So showing them as a family that this is what was happening between.
Thank you, thank you. I want to shift and talk about Daniel.
Okay.
Um, just a very intriguing character, and his path feels particularly still stony, if you will. Right? His internal struggle feels raw. He doesn't know who Daddy is. What happened to him? He's searching for the backstory, the reconciliation with his mom, who's past, still searching, going through the thing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Coming from a family that lives on less than enough or barely enough. So talk about that just in terms of how and the impact of those forces, whether it's just not having enough, poverty, being displaced, right? How that factors into the Danny's story, because he's again searching.
I wanted to decompress the distance that people have thinking about class privilege and skin privilege, right? Kind of shrink that space a little bit. Like, you know, he comes from a family, you know, his siblings, his mother and his siblings, and their father are clearly white. How that, or did that, right? Please say how it did that advantage them in some way, shape, or form, versus the class situation that they're stuck in. I want to play with that a little bit. Right? And how that weighs into, how that factors into his daily work situation, his interaction with death. It was another authority figure, a white woman, and it's like, but very different from herself. And the way she navigates the world, and the way his mother navigated the world, and the differences between them. And I think the point of access, you know, making him, trapping him in particular economic circumstances, allows the reader to kind of ask those questions and kind of be in their shoes and just do that. And again, commentary on, so, you know, what we call it. You know, so yeah,
Very telling, very telling. When I look at Jacob and Daniel, they're both embarking on a search for missing pieces. Daniel is really invested in family, very close to family, you know, living in that reconciliation piece with Jacob, just really reaching to be accepted, to be seen for who he is, as opposed to what his parents expect him to be and want him to be. Did you weigh, did you create these characters? Did you find yourself comparing the weight of their past, so to speak, of their birth?
That is an excellent question. Yes. Yes, I did, right? And that was a very long conversation that I had with my very brilliant editor, Yadon Israel. And I wanted Jacob to be the primary. I wanted you to read the book and the way the book was written. You know, at first it was all written in first person. Well, Jacob's sections were written in first person, and Daniel's sections were written in third person. Like, I wanted you to get the book and be love Jacob and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, he's so tough, he's going through, yada, yada, yada. And you read, then you have a more cerebral experience, right? And Don was like, this there's a fellow right too. She shared Don as an editor. And you have these conversations with him, and he just breaks things down. It's like,
It's really long.
yeah, you just sitting there like, you know, just, you know, he's like, this is not working because A, B, C, and D, and you know, the point of entry to your character, the point of entry to understanding, Daniel is carrying the emotional weight of the book because he has that experience. This man is searching his father, right? His mother is dead. She wasn't nobody's pleasant mama. And he's trying to navigate all this. And Jacob is a nice dude, right? But you know, he got rich people problems. You know, more or less. We ain't not discussing that. Again, this is a competition. So making the choice to clarify what's at stake for each one. That was like really that. You know, the decision that I had to make was you need to show what is the expense for Jacob in not reaching for the life that he wants, not defying. Well, let's put it in positive. Not embracing his life versus, you know, fulfilling his parents' expectations. Is there a way you can do both? Right? And show to his parents who he is. That's the question, right? And for Daniel, how does he break this cycle that he's in? The generational cycle of just class struggle, economic struggle, where his mother didn't know what she wasn't able to achieve. His siblings, you know. I mean, they're all like in the rut together. And how does he get out of that? Searching for his father, whether or not he finds his father, embrace a new path.
Thank you. I also want to talk about just the interaction between that unsettled and uneasy friendship and ultimate form of some alliance between Jacob and Daniel. And what you did with the term that you did, I'm going to. It's so juicy. There's an exchange. Where Daniel and Jacob confront their voice. Yeah. And Jacob aligns with Daniel. And Daniel is aroused visibly. And there's this association that I think, and I'll resonate with it, a black man asserting himself, to fight the power, right? To rise with that is Daniel. In that moment, he's not just focused on Jacob's look. It's like Jacob is standing up, and that turns him on. And in turn, makes him more attractive. Could you say more about that? How you introduce that sensual dimension to that in that moment?
To find an ally, to recognize that as dissimilar as Jacob's. Well, Daniel's doing the recognizing, but it's Jacob who's doing the actualizing, right? To recognize that they have more in common. And at that moment, it was Beth. And that they have more strength, fighting the struggle together. It was arousing. It was empowering as well. And opening up that kind of that mental and emotional space to say, oh, am I looking at him or looking at the situation this way, are there other possibilities that are here as well? Kind of navigating that space. I mean, of course, this is all happening. It's happening on page mentally, but it's happening to everything else. And they are each, they're not communicating, they're recognizing it happening between them. I mean, the evidence is kind of,
and I'm also intrigued by how sexuality itself functions throughout the story in different ways. As a medium that shifts in terms of its expression, but its purpose, right? For either gratification, pleasure, trust, escape, even violence. Even violence. What does that mean for you as a writer in terms of the importance of depicting the sexuality, sexual expression, and sexual intimacy for Black women?
I wanted to make sure. I always, when I write, whatever I'm writing, I want to make sure that I identify as Black kids. I want to make sure that we are seeing on the page, that we're visible, that our experiences are real and not constructed. And it doesn't always have to be as wonderful as it might be. It doesn't always have to be rocking. But it can be fulfilling in an emotional way. And it can be intimate. And I hope that's what I achieved. Okay? Showing that difference between just flat out, this is what it is, versus this is an emotional connection, this is an intimate connection, there's possibility here, this is someone reaching for a little bit more than just what's physical. They're trying to establish a connection. And I think that's what a lot of us still enjoy. So I wanted to speak to that, through the character, speak to that level of hope, that level of emotional evolution.
Thank you. I'm reminded of Sherman. We talk about Sherman, who comes later, who challenges in a number of ways. Challenges. No, I'm thinking about another way of what else he does, but he certainly nudges and invites Jacob, right? From the very beginning, from the onset, questioning who he's working for and what does that mean in terms of Jacob's values, just calling out the dilemma. Mm-hmm. So it's challenging him in terms of pushing Jacob to reach for those high stakes risks, personal and professional. And that particular relationship seems to say something about what Jacob, again, is nudged to discover in terms of them learning about himself through an intimate relationship. Mm-hmm. So, what are your thoughts about that? In terms of, again, that there's a way in which we can talk about you can't love nobody until you love yourself. Mm-hmm. There's a certain kind of knowing, a certain kind of self-awareness that is not can only come. I will offer, suggest, through an intimate relationship. Right? Is that what's happening with Sherman?
To an extent, yes, but then also, again, the light reflecting back on Jacob. What is he willing to risk? What is he going to let go of? What are his assumptions? And how do they play into what Sherman is challenging him with, right? How does Sherman's confrontations with Jacob are also reflections of Jacob's own confrontations that he's having. He has the questions that Sherman asks him out loud are questions that you see at the very beginning of the book that Jacob already is asking himself. And now, what is Jacob really, really risk? And he sees, he has this, he has this attraction to show, right? And when he comes, again, there's a causes and expense attached to that future, it's right? Like reaching for this, can I actually get it? But what do I have to give up to embrace that? What's the comfort do I have to leave? And in leaving this comfort, do I enter into something else? Do I enter into more open, more giving, or more fulfilling? I don't want to confront that fear. So, yeah.
Thank you. I want to do a time check. ER?
Yep. I think we maybe go to audience questions soon.
Okay. I'll take your questions.
Yeah.
So we have two microphones, one here and one here. We have time for about 3 audience questions because we have an amazing food opportunity for y'all and reception. So we want to have time for that. So
We are hungry because we don't want to eat none of this food.
that's right. So it's made it out for y'all.
Hello, everyone. What's up?
With us?
And so happy for this moment for you. It's been a long time coming. And I was working on every part of the early draft.
You were.
And was very excited.
Very good feedback too. Thank you.
Glad that you trusted that in me. And I've watched you move over the years, because that was a long time ago. And I've watched you move through economic development, through real estate, through cities, east and south. And those weren't small moves. And I guess my question is, like, how have you maintained this commitment, this level of commitment, and all this time that's passed, and all that you've achieved along the way? So that's one question. And then the second question is, do you think young Doug, what do you think young Doug, who was really hungry for this to happen during that period, how is he different now from this person who is at this point?
Oh, wow. Those are great questions. So the answer to your first question is, I just have seen other people doing it. Just other people, and just in a short span of time, they would agent, they would, send their book out, and all of a sudden they would get it published and everything else. And then, y'all love me through this, I read that book. I'm just saying, I gotta keep pushing. And what I was told, Doug 30 years ago couldn't have written this book. Doug 30 years ago didn't have the experience, he didn't have the patience, he knew everything, right? So it's remarkable he didn't write it then, but it was just me moving and seeing and understanding and experiencing the different things that you just referenced that, I was able to put it together. I would say this version of this book is probably the last 10 years, last 10 or 12 years, everything else. And so that was the difference.
Good. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. This is my very brilliant niece. That's yeah.
That's how I'm studying environmental science, but I'm also really passionate about activism work, as my uncle does know. So my question is, what do you want the new generation of leaders and change makers to kind of take from you all's experiences and your stories that you're sharing with us in order to move them forward and kind of restore the community that we heard the old books talk about, but we can't find it anywhere? Restore and maintain community for ourselves and for the people.
That's a great question. I think what we all need to do is recognize the strength that we all have. You are right. You know, us being, let's say, seasoned, right? Us being more seasoned and you guys having more energy. You know, there's a middle space that we can get into, you know, sharing and understanding how we can. I love that word, restoration. Right? Just there is community that's missing. There's community that's missing that we need. And I think that we can all teach each other, you know, at the different ranges of our generational experiences, how we can build that middle bridge somewhere in happens. But thank you, niece.
I work at the Park Avenue Research Library. If you don't know, we were transitioned from a gallery to a museum. No, actually, we started the gallery during the 1996 Cultural Olympiad. We got funds to do that. So when I think about the Olympics in Atlanta, this 1996, I'm I guess pushed with positive things that accompanied that. I didn't think about the gentrification and gay urban renewal they were doing. So I was wondering, why was the 1996 Olympics specifically based off of urban renewal and Somerville neighborhood important the story?
Why I was talking about that important?
Yeah, like when we think about Atlanta, Atlanta has changed drastically over the past 30 years. So why that specific moment was important to talk about it? Like what, I guess, significance should the reader take from
because the attack on Black folks. I mean, Somerville today is not Somerville 30 years ago. And there were other places in Techwood, was it Perry Home, Brady Homes, raised these cases from the I think no longer exists. That whole area around Georgia Tech was completely different. That was public housing, like all of that. And so I wanted to really, again, so where do these people go? You know, like what happens? How these decisions get made? You know, how do we give attention to what's there, but understand how what's there got there and what it's spent and what it costs. So yeah, that's something to focus on. Yes.
Hello. First, congratulations again. I knew when I first saw your cover.
Thank you.
We showed this to my mom. This is gonna be. So I'm a quite well. I was a part of the AUC graduate. As well. Was there a significant like positive and not so positive experience that you had at Morehouse that you knew you needed to include in the book and it had a purpose?
I think yes. So when I senior year, when I came out, the end of senior year, my life pretty much fell apart. Is that Amy back there? Zoe. So Amy is one of the women at Spelman who saved my life. I don't know if is Tiara here. Amy and I. Can I tell the story, Amy? Do you mind? Okay. Amy and I became. Amy. First of all, Amy actually told me I was gay years before. Thank you. And somehow I convinced her. And so when I actually did come out, it was horrible. And it wasn't that we had Amy rightfully hated me for a little while. But the fact that she's here, and she was one of my closest friends. She's one of my dearest friends. Is a testament to the kind of woman that she is. And so, and there were three other women with her that like really rallied around us. There were like 3 or 4 of us that really helped stay. it was a really tough experience. I lost friends. I could not talk to, like, at that point, I was not ready to talk to my parents yet. And so talking about in the book, talking about the reason why I'm talking about community, the reason why I'm talking about friendships that Jacob had, and what she's moving through and around post Morehouse is again within a community that's support that he needed psychologically and emotionally to move through, work through everyday life. So that's for us. So what was your second question? Did you have two questions?
No, I was saying positive and negative. I guess that's kind of like combined. Like that experience you had that was positive, and when it was negative that you knew you had to like integrate into the book. So,
but the positive part of that is I think you just came to her husband. I was there too. Hey, listen, and this is a beautiful woman. This is from Charis. See, everybody's here. I'm sorry.
So the question I wanted to ask was, with the very few narratives about Black queer men written by Black queer men, what sets this book apart, and what do you hope to contribute to the literature community through this book?
Thank you. I write in the tradition of Essex Temple and Ron Riggs, other countries, Sabine, and the like. All those. I write in that tradition, and these are Black queer or gay men who were writing back in the mid-80s, and early 90s, unfortunately.
And none of them lived to be.
They died from HIV. Or AIDS. And they took that work with them. And some of them worked on brilliant stories and everything else, but they took that work with them. And there was a gap, right? So I would say some of them were poised to, they were publishing their own work. Some of them were really poised to, and so I hope to write into that space. That's the tradition of which I write into. And so I hope to build a community of understanding. I hope to, through my work, to help heal families, right? It's a conversation that I'm having with my own family, right? That we're still learning, right? We're still evolving. Lots of love. There was no shortage. But we all have to figure out how to grow and how to be, how to connect together, and to build that community space for one another and for our loved ones and within our parents. Thank you. Does that answer the question? Thank you. Yes, sir.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
It's a long time coming. For your readers, right? I know you used to be a very thoughtful and very intentional person with words. So for your readers, what is something you want your readers to?
Is that better? Yes.
But you were very intentional with words, just in general. So what is something that you want your readers to take away from your novel, just to walk away with? You have a concept of an idea.
Oh, beautiful answer. No. What do I want my readers to take away? I want my readers to think about identity in their lives. The brothers silences, the brothers and sisters, right? We're their family members, their friends. Creating space to have those conversations. Invite who they're inviting to Christmas dinner, to Easter. Having that loving relationship, working through what those comfort levels or discomfort levels, right? That's right. That's for some of the readers, right? For others of the readers, I want us to take risks, right? And others, I say us, right? I want us to take risks. I want us to reach for the high goal of not making a judgment call. I want to assume the high goal of relationship, and let's not even say relationship with the people as much as relationship with ourselves, to confront that fear, to work through whatever those challenges are. Yeah, that's what
We are going to have a beautiful book signing, and the great thing about this is we don't always have receptions, but Doug has offered this beautiful reception to help him celebrate. We really want you to stay and get food. The reception's going to be in the artist and writers area, which is just to the left of the central area where you signed in. Craig has a comment.
Thank you. So I just want to thank you before we shift gears to another.
Oh, before they leave, I have to take a picture.
Definitely. I want to thank you because I think about the times in which we're in right now and the ways in which those of us who are Black and women and trans and queer and living on some kind of boredom or insecurity, living on less than enough or maybe just enough. How important it is for the very lineage that you spoke of, writing in the tradition of. I invite you to own that you are part of that lineage. Yeah. You're just not writing in the tradition. Thank you. You are what Joseph means. And certainly others, those whose names we know, we cite, and those who we don't. You are part of that lineage. Thank you. I want you to take care of yourself. I will do that because I love you and I want you to be here. I'm reminded of there's a piece that Jim Baldwin spoke to when he was nearing departing this life. And there's a reconcile what he says, and it's about making something about, I think the way I see it is making peace with it all. And he said something about if they can find something useful in this wreckage, right? In terms of the work, yeah, and who he was. Yeah. So thank you, because we ain't here forever, right? So thank you for all that you do and all that you are, making yourself useful.
Thank you to Craig Washington. We're going to take